it makes you feel any better, I still use our bookmarks in school. Like
Perfect.
I had to go through when I returned my books the other day because I've rented several books for the semester.
And pull out the. I should have just left them in.
I walked with like 15 extra bookmarks. I'm pretty sure I did leave a few in, but I walked out of there with like 15 bookmarks that were holding places I forgot.
That's funny.
So I had an embarrassing kind of moment in the original art world. It was embarrassing and frustrating. I found this, actually, I didn't find, Billy Z found this artist. Billy Z from the Comic Book Bears found this artist online that kind of has this really cool Darwin Cook kind of vibe to it. And so I looked him up and I was really excited, and I saw where he had an Etsy page where he sold prints. And so I was going to reach out and just be like, hey, like, you know, I don't do prints, but, you know, do you do commissions? You do original art? I'd love to get something from you, because I thought he would kind of kill like a Hawkman. And so I was going to reach out, and I did, and he emailed me back, and we got to talking, and you know, back and forth. And he's like, you know, I do commissions. The stuff on Etsy is all just, you know, it's inked line works on,
right.
You know, I did color digitally, so there's nothing to sell there, but I do commissions. It's like $150. You know, if you're interested, we can talk. And so we did. We kind of negotiated a price, and at the end of it, he was like, so where are you located? And I was like, oh, you know, I'm in Arkansas. And I saw where he had kind of this a foreign email address. It was not a .com, it was a like whatever the country is. And I was like, you know, I'm over here, so if I need to throw in some extra bucks for shipping, you know, I'll be happy to. Like, you know, that's, you're an artist,
right?
And he was just like, oh no, like I'm based in I think the country was Japan. I'm based in Japan, but I ship and print and ship out of California. And I'm like, wait, hold up. Like, time out. Like, let's back up a little bit. What do you mean you print and it's going to ship out of there? And so what it was a misconception on my part. I had misread something. And what he was doing is he was going to do a digital commission, which is a thing. Lots of people do that.
Right.
I don't collect, you know, digital prints. And for people who do that, like, it's not knocking it. I respect the work. Trust me, I understand how much time and effort and talent goes into, you know, doing digital commissions, doing digital art, period. It's just not my taste. I don't collect that. So I had to like be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I just, like, it's a matter of personal taste. I don't do that. You know, I wasn't trying to lead you on. And so it was embarrassing on my part, but I felt bad.
I'm sure it's happened before.
Yeah. I hate kind of reneging on deals. And
well, I'm kind of surprised he didn't offer to do regular art. That's probably not the word, but
hand-drawn art.
You know, hand-drawn art versus digital.
Too, especially because what he said is, you know, when we were talking, and what led me to believe we were talking about a physical hand-drawn piece commission, was he said, I do all the line works and I color it digitally. And I was like, okay, so we're talking about the, you know, I want the line work. That's what I want. And he, I think what happens is he does a very loose sketch, artist does, and then puts it in there and does all the inking, everything. So again, I'll throw some of his work in the show notes. I'll send, you know, and send it, because people who it's really good art. It's really good. I just don't collect digital stuff. So I felt like a total asshole being like,
well, so, you know, the thing is, I do have a couple of pieces of digital art, but they're from people that I know really well. Because I'm always scared with digital that somebody else is going to end up with a quote unquote print of it.
Right.
Which then, in my mind, devalues the original piece. And how do you prove what you have is the original piece unless you get a COA with it or something?
Right.
So for me, it's always, if I'm going to get a digital piece of art, it's going to be from somebody I know really well and trust.
No, it's the same. And for me, especially, you know, like, look, I'm not in a position right now where I can drop, you know, $200, $300, $400 on a commission. So a lot of the people that I do commissions from are, you know, smaller artists, people who don't have a following. They're on, you know, I find them on Instagram. I see them on Comic Art Fans or what have you. And, you know, I can afford a $150 piece. I can afford $100 piece or something like that. But these people don't have a big following. And, you know, when it's somebody that I literally just met over the internet, and I'm not like absolutely not saying that the person I was talking to did that or was going to do that or whatever, but, you know, I've got no guarantee that I'm not paying $150 for a file that you've already got on your computer that's done, and you're just going to, you know, ship to a printer.
Yes.
So, Yeah,
that's the gamble with digital art.
yeah.
So, it's kind of like the NFTs thing, which I don't get me wrong, I don't really understand it.
Oh, way over my head.
Yeah. But basically, you get the original NFT, but they can still sell prints and so forth of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, I own the original piece of digital art, but other people can own the same piece. It's a very hard concept for me to get. So
I'm just
same
like,
with the digital. It's just like, you really have to trust the people.
Yeah. I don't understand. I am ignorant in the ways of cryptocurrency and NFT and everything, because I'm the same way when you're talking about that. I'm just like, yeah, cool story, bro. I've got a screenshot of the same thing.
Yeah.
and I enjoy it just as much. So
yeah. So I totally get it.
You know what else you can have trust in? That you have to have trust in? That the Southern Fried Geekery podcast is going to hit every Sunday. And you get to do whenever you want to, but that you and me are going to come out and you and me at this moment, but usually the third person are going to have a new episode that drops, and it's dependable. It's like clockwork, and that's how you know that you can trust us and that we're not just a print.
We are not an NFT.
We are not an NFT, although I'm sure we could find a neat little phrase to play off that. This is episode 176 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. I am 1/3 of this thing. I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And we are minus a Matt today. Monsieur Trogdon texted us this morning. He's like, hey, I'm under the weather, so I think you guys have to handle this one without me. Which was understandable. These things happen. So
that's right.
We hope he gets well real quick. We're gonna miss him on the show. But
for sure,
it means that you and I get to spend quality time together,
right?
So, and I know this is an audio podcast, but if we were together, would you be the big spoon or the little spoon in this thing?
Yeah, we're just gonna keep on going.
How's your week, man, Boo?
It's been pretty good, man.
Getting baseball in
every week, man. Watched every day. Watched 4 Travelers games this week. Got rained out Friday night. Well, they kept playing, but I went home.
Craig got rained out.
Well, I got season tickets this year, so it's like I told Stephanie, I'm not going to sit here in the rain and the cold when I can come back the next night and watch.
Right.
So so I went home and watched some baseball. My Padres are hit and miss this year, so just enjoying that and getting a little bit of reading done. Not as much as I should be, but getting a little done. And
good.
Playing some video games and that sort of stuff, and working, of course.
Yeah. Well, what you said there is not enough as you should be when it comes to reading. No, there is no enough as you should be. You read because it makes you happy, and you read the amount that makes you happy. If you, I don't know about you, like I had the opposite this week. I finally got to read. I've got about 3 weeks worth of stuff stacked up, but I read till I was content because this is not a job; it's a hobby, and so I think sometimes
when I tend to be. Yeah, I've been lately just kind of letting them stack up, and then I'll sit down and read about a month's worth at once.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I've been kind of playing it lately.
Yeah, ain't a bad way to spend a day. So.
It's not. So, and you're right. It is fun. It's not a job. We do even the show. We do it for fun, not for any other reason.
I do it just so I can spend time with my boys. That's why I do.
Well, there's that too.
And talk funny books. So.
Well, and we were actually going to physically record together this week, but with Matt being sick, we decided to go ahead and record socially distanced, if you will.
Yep.
One more time, but I think probably here in the next week or two, we'll probably all get together and record together for the first time in like a year.
And dude, I can't wait for that because. When I saw you guys together at the local comic book shop a few weeks ago, that was just, it reminded me how much I missed it. Like, and so yeah, sitting down in person together at the table with you guys over coffee, talking about this stuff is going to be fun. It's definitely been missed.
For sure.
You know, the
ready
social,
to do that.
The doing it on Zoom the way we do it, it's got its conveniences. Don't get me wrong, it's got its perks. Like, you know, I don't have to, you know, drive and stuff, but it misses the communal element that I think is such an important part.
It actually took me quite a while to get over missing that when we first had to switch to Zoom. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a hard thing for me at first. It was like, sometimes I feel like I'm talking into the void.
Right.
Now we all got better about, you know, intercommunicating through Zoom as we got used to it. But at first it was kind of hard.
Now I will say the one perk of sitting alone in a room is I am the smartest person in this room. You know, your voice is here, but you are not. So I can say that, you know,
I hear you
definably that I'm the smartest person in my office right now. Well, that's
there you
actually
go.
My dog just walked in, so that might not be true. So she just runs for me.
Yeah, it's, you know, as long as Stephanie doesn't open the door and poke her head in, I'm the smartest one in the room as well.
Well, you want to talk about some comics?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell me what you've been reading this week? Give me a little short stack action.
Yeah, so I read Nightwing number 79, and I'm not sure if this is Tom Taylor's first issue on here or when he jumped on the book, because to be quite honest, I quit reading it during the Rick Grayson era. But for some reason, I decided to just go ahead and read it this week, and was not disappointed. So Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo, this particular, did I say it's issue 79?
Yes.
Anyways, this issue finds Nightwing and Barb out on a date, and you know, they go to, well, not really on a date, but hanging out, and they go to get some pizza, and he kind of looks at her and she says, "What? You're the billionaire." So, you know, he pays, and through the whole kind of issue, he's struggling with his newfound wealth and what to do with it to help people, and none of it ever seeming to be enough. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, kind of looking from a newfound billionaire's eyes, and how he's going to deal with that in his own world.
Just for the record, yeah, this is Tom Taylor's first issue on the book.
It felt like it,
yeah,
and I thought it was. So I guess I jumped back on at perfect timing. So. Looking forward to see what Tom does with Nightwing, because I generally enjoy Tom Taylor's work. So
he's so good, such a good writer.
Right. I also read Baby Teeth number 17 from Aftershock Comics, Donny Cates and Gary Brown. And this book picks up, you know, sometime after the end of the last arc. And at the end of the last arc, the devil had started Armageddon. But this book answers asks the question, what happens if the devil starts Armageddon, but God doesn't want to play with him? Yeah, so the devil does everything to start Armageddon, but God does not send forth his armies to fight back. So the devil just decides to go ahead and create an army of antichrists throughout the world. So there's little antichrists being born all over the world. Interesting take on that mythology, if you will. And then the not the last book I read, but the last one on my short stack is the Invincible Red Sonja #1 by Dynamite. Now, you know, I've had some issues with Dynamite and their policies of late, but this one has Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti on it. So, you know, the story's good. You know, Amanda Connor, you're going to have some hypersexualization of characters. Because that's just the way she draws. But overall, I really, really enjoyed this issue. Did you happen to get it?
I haven't read it yet. It is on my list. Kind of the same with Dynamite. I kind of slacked off on them. But you know, I do love Red Sonja, and I think that they have changed some of the policies, some of the issues that he kind of scruffed up. Because look, and you're the same way. I'm the kind of person I will vote with my wallet. It's not saying other people can't read it. It's not judging people for what they want to do, but I'm just not going to support certain things. And and like I said, you're the same way, but I am gonna read this because yeah, it's Jimmy and Amanda. Like that's such a dynamic pairing. And her
and you
artist,
know what you're getting with them,
right?
So as long as you're prepared for that going in, it felt the most. And this is no knock on Mark Russell's Red Sonja because I enjoyed it, but this felt the most like a Red Sonja book that I've read in a long time.
And I said this on the show. I know. Matt loved the Mark Russell and Bob. Was it Bob Q? I think it was Bob Q. Red Sonja. I was lukewarm on it. I had expected something else from Mark Russell, and I kind of expected something else from Red Sonja, and those two things were polarized, I think. And what came out of it was good. It was entertaining. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it was just
it was a good story. It wasn't necessarily what I look for in Red Sonja.
Right. Or a Mark Russell book, and that was
Mark Russell. It was somewhere in the middle of both of those things.
Yeah.
You had a muted Red, and stuff may have happened after I kind of quit reading it. So this is just my opinion on the issues I read. You kind of had a muted Red Sonja with a muted Mark Russell on his politics in it. Now there was definitely some political commentary in it because it's Mark Russell. But this particular book, though, Invincible Red Sonja, is not a muted Red Sonja at all. It was
full tilt,
what I want to see. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, I read some things this week. A bunch of floppies, one of which I'm gonna drop in my short stack, and that was none other than Superman Red and Blue #2 came out. Dude, I am digging. First off, let me just say, like, both Marvel and DC are doing these little books right now, where they're anthology books. We had Wolverine Red, White, and Blood. I think they're doing, is it Deadpool now or Carnage? Yeah, it's a Carnage book. Now I'm not reading that one because Carnage isn't a character I gravitate to.
Same.
But look, I love that they're coming out, and you're getting Batman Black and White, and so now you've got Superman Red and Blue, and I'm loving these little anthologies because you get these little 6 to 8 page short stories that are just boiled down because you don't have a lot of space to play in to the essence of who these characters are, and it's awesome. This one you've got several writers. You've got people. Let's see, Stephen T. Siegel. You've got Chuck Brown, Dan Panosian, Stephanie Phillips, Jason Howard. You've got art by Duncan Royu. You've got Brian Bolland did a variant cover for this. Dennis Cowan did art for this. What? Dan Panosian wrote and draw his own like he does. But Marley Zarcone did some work in this. Tom Napolitano did some work. And it's a fun and fitting book, especially that I read it this morning because the first little story in this is about Ma Kent. It's a mother story. And since today is Mother's Day of all days, shout out to all the mothers, the women who gave life and can take it away at the drop of a hat. We love you and appreciate you that you let us continue on in our existence. But and in this little story, just real quick, she's sitting at a diner with a couple of her old, I call them, the old biddies at the diner drinking coffee. She's sitting there with a couple of ladies, and they're trying to. It's one of those things they mean well, but what they're saying is incredibly rude, because they're talking about her being a mother, but how even though she didn't have a quote unquote child of her own, and she just goes about setting them in their place. She's just like, what? Oh, do you mean a child of my own? And that I wake up all night when he's not there. I worry if he's eating. We worry if he's learning, if he's the good person. Is that what you mean by a child of our own? And it's this whole story is like, no, she's like, Ma Kent is his mother,
right?
Like you don't have to give birth to a child to be a mother.
Right.
If you do, awesome, fantastic, rad,
right?
Thank you. If you don't, that doesn't, that's not it's not pie. Doesn't take a slice away from somebody else.
That's right.
As somebody who has women in my life that I consider mothers who did not give birth to me, that story meant a lot, and I know it meant a lot to people who whether or not you have chosen to be the son of a matron figure who is your mother, or if you were adopted or whatever. Like, it was a good story to read this morning, and kind of reflect on it. So, and I didn't know it was going to be there. So it was just, that one of those times where timing is awesome. Also, and I haven't finished this yet because She Thick with 3 C's, THICC. But there is a new book by the great Barry Windsor Smith that came out. It's called Monsters. First work Barry Windsor Smith has done in, I think, like 2 decades. I picked it up. I've been reading it. I'm about through half of it, but like I said, she's a big book, and it is glorious. I absolutely love this book. If you are a fan of Barry Windsor Smith, and you want to support his work, you need this. It looks great on the shelf, and it's Barry Windsor Smith. Like, it is his. You open it up, you see those figures, and you just know.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, that's the man. And it will.
Yeah, I missed this the first week it came out for some reason, and I was going to get it last week, but to be honest, I had 2 other omnibuses in my. Yeah, it was an expensive week, so I passed on this for this week. But hopefully, they'll have an issue at the store this coming week.
Nice. I hope so, because you're gonna want this. Yeah, it's definitely a Craig book. And then my third thing on the short stack, I'm gonna bend the rules a little bit. It's not a comic. What?
Oh yeah.
I read other things. I do. I started reading yesterday because I'm out of school and I have time, which is a rare and valuable thing that I really appreciate. I got up early yesterday morning. I went outside. I set up my little spot, put my hammock up in my trees, got my ice chest out. And I sat in my hammock for about 6 hours and swung while my dogs played in the backyard. And I read Rob Halford's autobiography, Confess. Dude, if you are a Judas Priest fan, as I am, as I know you are, if you are a fan of people with interesting stories, if you like just biography, pick this book up. Like, it is awesome. You get the full scope of Rob Halford's coming of age story, of his, introduction to theatrics, of his falling in love with music, who his first like musical loves were. Hint, it's a lot of Deep Purple, which was kind of surprising. I didn't expect that. Yeah. He talks about the era of the time that living in England, living in the UK, how it gave birth to bands like Judas Priest and Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath and all those guys, how it gave birth to metal and why it did. Like, all that's in there. And of course, his struggles with his sexuality, his keeping it hidden, being the lead singer of, at the time, in the early 80s, of the metal band that finally broke the top 40 charts, the heavy metal band that did that, and having to keep his life a secret and what that was like. It is fascinating. It's a fascinating read. I was angry yesterday when I had to put it down and go do other things. I didn't want to walk away.
That's always the sign of a good book.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And hopefully, as the summer goes on, I'm going to have a few more of these things to kind of drop in my short stacks, because I have been collecting some prose that I want to get read this summer, that are
nice.
They're nerd tangent. So, Judas Priest is nerd tangent. And so I'm going to throw a few of those in the short stack too. So as we go on. So I'm excited. So
how long are you out of school right now? 2 weeks?
I have a break until June 7th because I'm taking one summer class. I decided, I looked at my schedule and looked at what I would like to take and some bar tested courses, and decided I would take a summer class just to get it knocked out, because I wasn't sure if it would be offered again. And I do want to take it.
Nice.
So I know what I'm walking into, but it's a night class, meets 2 days a week. So I can handle that easy.
Yeah. Not gonna take up your whole summer.
Nah. I'm
Good.
Getting to take a vacation this summer. I'm excited. Like, I'm not joking, man. I feel relaxed. Like, for the first time in months,
Good.
I feel like I took a good breath. So
1 year left, right?
Yep, that's it. 2 more semesters.
Nice. Congrats on getting through this season.
Then you got to start calling me Dr. Lawyer Caleb.
Something like that.
Oh no, it's gonna happen.
Caleb Esquire.
I'm going to be a Juris Doctor. JD.
Perfect.
Gonna meet up with our other doctor friends, and we're gonna shake hands, and we're gonna say doctor, and they're gonna say doctor back.
You're not going to shake hands. You're going to bump fist.
Probably.
We've learned that shaking hands needs to go away. Yeah,
it's true. I've got a bottle of hand sanitizer right here just in case. I'll squirt it at people.
Just in case somebody randomly shakes your hand.
Yeah, you don't want that, right? That's not a good thing.
Right.
So good stuff to have read all around, and some of those things, like you said, go find them at your local comic book shop, or your local bookstore or Amazon or elsewhere. But just get them legally and read. It's fun times. Just by the way of shout out, because we already mentioned them kind of. The place that we go to pick up our books every week is because it's near and dear to our heart. It's very important to our relationship. It is Powell Comics over in Sherwood, Arkansas. Best place in Central Arkansas, kind of the best place in Arkansas, period, to get your books, your collectibles, to get more. If you walk in there, they've got a huge floor space. They've got an amazing dollar bin. So if you're looking for stuff you read, you don't want to break the bank. I think they've got like 20, 30 something long boxes full of books you can get for $1.
And they've got vintage toys.
They've got vintage board games. They've got vintage video games.
Yep.
They've got a damn good hardcover collection. So they have done the work.
Wednesday afternoons, you can find me chilling, hanging out with our other buddies. Sometimes Matt's there.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, talking.
I miss that. I don't get to do that as much anymore. I'm jelly.
Yeah. Working in school, man, it'll do it to you.
I hate it. I would have been an amazing house husband. Amazing.
Right.
Feel like I'm not getting to live my true calling.
Well, I feel like when you start your own practice, you can turn off Wednesdays.
No law Wednesday.
No law Wednesday.
It's going to be a thing.
You can work till 10 o'clock on Wednesdays,
and then come back after like 3. Put in a few hours.
Yeah, there you go.
So I feel like that's a good trade-off.
I do too. Take all your lunch breaks in one day.
It's necessary, even one might say. It's good for our health, really.
It is good for our health.
It's a matter of health. So we picked up a book this week, as we always do. We decided, hey, we would roundtable this thing. It looked interesting to us, and we're going to do that. But before we do that, I just wanted to throw out there that the only real way to talk about a comic book is to spoil some things. Otherwise, you're beating around the bush. You can't really hit plot points that make these stories, it's so important, so prescient to talk about. And so we're going to talk about this book that we picked up, and we're going to spoil some things. So if you haven't read The Good Asian yet from Image Comics, then hit the pause button, go read it, come back, and then listen to the rest of the show. And also for the books that we're going to talk about, you can check those things out. But we don't want to ruin anybody's experience. That's not cool. But we also do this because we like talking about books. So
that's right.
Don't let yourself be spoiled. You've had fair warning at this point. It's on you. The ball is in your court, which is a sports reference. And as a gay, I'm impressed with myself. So, all right, you ready to talk about this?
I mean, gays like sports.
I love sports.
How stereotypical of you.
Look, it was I have my own internal issues that I work out. Don't, but I'm not going to work them out on the show. You're right. Thank you for being a good ally. Thank you for standing up for me against myself. It's a thing that you have to do quite often. I am an insecure man.
All good. It's all good, brother.
All right. So
I'm like thinking, man, most of the gays I know enjoy sports. I don't know what you're talking about.
I will say, because that is true, and I also know the circle, like your circle of friends. I'm in that circle.
Right. It's probably not the prototypical, but still,
you have a very specific, unique window into gay culture that is not typical. Because you're right, most of your homosexual friends, such as myself, we love sports. I'm a huge football fan. That is not necessarily true overall.
Gotcha.
You've played the game of numbers and won. So which is nice, right? But all right, so The Good Asian, this is like I said, from Image Comics. It was written by Pornsak Pichetshote, Alexandre Tefenkgi, Lee Loughridge did the colors, Jeff Powell did the letters and design, with a cover by Dave Johnson, and Santa Takata did a variant cover for this, which is kind of cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very, very cool. So just real quick, as we always do, give me the 30,000-foot view of your opinion on this book.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the book. Um, have zero complaints.
Nice.
Yeah,
Dude, I fell in love with this story. I
yeah.
absolutely fell in love with it. It is all up in my wheelhouse. I, I love I love detective stories. I love mysteries. I love books that are socially conscious.
Crime noir.
Yeah, just everything about this book was a win. So what is this book, you might ask? What with a book like The Good Asian, that title doesn't tell you very much. This is a 1930s, like Craig said, noir story that takes place in Chinatown, in the midst of an era that people of Asian descent, whatever that may be, whether Japanese, Chinese, Southeast Asian, Korean, they were not treated well. In fact, um, and this is where I say that the story is socially conscious. It's also incredibly timely, and this is it's timely in the sense that these weren't made yesterday. I think we live in a news era where we see something happening in the news and in real life, then we see something happen in art and we're like, oh, that's just they're just playing off the moment. But comics take months to make, right? Like this is a story that has been in the works for a long time, um, and it's just one of those things. It's where art reflects kind of where we're at, and they just link up in a really cool way, which I think is always interesting. But as we live in a country right now in the United States that you can't deny that there is a huge issue with race relations, specifically with attacks on our people, our neighbors of Asian descent. A lot of it had to do with the former, call him a president if you want to, the language that a certain political mindset likes to use against to describe the coronavirus and placing blame. But I think it's also that anti-Asian, uh, Pacific Islander mindset has always been there. It's just kind of inflamed and elevated right now. And this book speaks on that, but I don't know that this book really knew that it was going to come out um, in such a time. Um, and some of that history started around in 1882, right? Like the U.S. passed an actual ban on Chinese immigrants. They said no one of Chinese descent can come in. In 1924, the Johnson-Reed Act expanded the ban to include all Asians, not just people of Chinese descent and people of Arabic descent. So, um, and the book, like I said, takes place in 1936, and that's almost a half century. It's 50 years after we've had this policy, this incredibly discriminatory policy based completely on race, solely unconstitutional. And I'll say that as somebody who is in law school and has taken con law and understands how how the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution. Like those bans are blatantly unconstitutional. They spit in the face of what our Constitution says. Um, you know, Similar to what happened with some of the policies about immigration with the former folks that were in the White House. Um, but this book takes place. The story starts off in one of these immigration kind of camps. This boy who is trying to come into the country, because there were exceptions to all rules. There's exceptions. They you could apply for a work, the equivalent of a work visa at the time, and this boy's trying to get in, and he's asking, why did my family send me here? And there's this detective, and he's also a Chinese, or he appears to be a Chinese man. He's sitting there talking to him, and he's talking to the kid. He's like, well, they sent you over here because they thought that this was going to be the place for you, and they wouldn't have sent you here if they didn't think it was a good idea, because they love you. Obviously there's going to be some hardships in there, but you can make it. And this man, his name, or at least the name that he goes by, is Edison Hark. And Edison Hark is this Chinese American. He was I think he stems from Hawaii at the time, which was one of the only places where he could become a detective, where he could take a job as a law enforcement officer. And now he's moved to San Francisco. and he's trying to work this case, and he's trying to. It feels to me, at least, like he's trying to ride both sides of the fence. Like he's trying to play the cop. He's trying to be the detective. He's trying to deal with the racism that comes from his quote unquote own side. At the same time, he's trying to use his heritage, his descent, his Asian descent to get into the community and find out what he needs. Because he's looking for a woman, as all good detective stories are. There is a person from his past that has disappeared, and he's trying to track them down because he has a very interesting story. Some of his history is that his mother was a Chinese maid who worked for a very powerful white man, and this very powerful white man, you could say he fell in love with the mother, or he took the family under his wing, what have you. There's a whole lot of there's layers. It's like Shrek's onion. There's a whole lot of context of this that's going to unfold as the story goes. But Edison was kind of adopted into this family, and now the father has, he's passed away. He's gone, and they're looking for somebody, and he's dealing with this entire time with the dynamics of this family that he was adopted into, this Caucasian family, how he's a part of it when it's convenient, but he's not a part of it. There's a lot of back and forth here, and I should say I don't think the father is quote unquote dead. I think he's on his deathbed. But they're looking for the sister, and as he is trying to track her down, this leads to other major issues. I think it's what has brought him to San Francisco. It's what's brought him to this place, and he's acting as a detective here in a place where there's not any other Asian detectives in Chinatown. It's a Chinese noir story, and he's searching for clues, and they send him down a couple of rabbit holes. One of which dealing with this gang called the Tongs. As Hark is uncovering, trying to trace down the trail, he finds this young boy sitting alone in an alley as the police are doing raids on these kind of tenement houses where these Chinese American people are living, threatening to deport them if they don't cooperate because there's been a crime committed. So he goes over to talk to this boy, and this boy's being very shifty, doesn't act like he's hiding something. And because he's a decent detective, he's got good people skills. He talks to this kid, and this kid leads him to this bunker where he opens it up, and there's just carnage down below. And this is kind of where the story ends as far as this first issue is concerned, but it opens up to the broader world of what's going on there. There are just maggot infested, just nastiness bodies everywhere, and there's a hatchet buried in one of these men's chests, and that is kind of the signature calling card, so to speak, of these Tongs, which are kind of this triad-esque, if you're familiar with the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. I guess they're a gang, and this is how they kind of, but they haven't been operating in Chinatown for a while, at least that anybody knows. They thought they were gone, and it apparently they're not, and they're going to make life difficult for Edison as he is tracking down this woman who kind of has a number of connections to both him as a person, and I imagine what we're going to find out to the Tongs as an industry or an organization. So, dude, like I said, I'm a big fan of detective fiction. I love it. I love, yeah, and there's a difference between spy novels and detective fiction. I think this book, Pichetshote has a foot and a handle on both of those concepts.
Right.
And I just kind of fell in love with it. I can't wait to see. Like, I'm the lady Lady in the Blue Dress is one of my favorite spy books. Or not spy books, detective stories. I love Easy Rollins, and when you think about detective stories, you've got your Sherlock Holmes, the Maltese Falcon. A lot of these are based in noir fiction. They're the sturgid, cold, white detective. I like these books that take that trope, they take that that demographic and they of literature and they flip it on its head the way that this one does. It's really cool because he's fighting from two different angles or three different angles, really.
Right.
He doesn't have that I can go anywhere, do what I want to, people are gonna move out of my way thing working for him, in the way that you see with the Maltese Falcon, some of these other books. I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did as well. I'm probably not going to pick it up monthly. This is going to be a book I'm going to pick up in trade format, just because I'd like to sit down and read it all at once, not for any other reason. Yeah, really enjoyed it. The art, like I said earlier, I love the panel layouts. I love everything about it, quite honestly.
I was trying to, especially with Noir. Noir is so visual, and I was trying, as I was looking through this, I was trying to find an artist that I could compare the line work to, and off the top of my head, I can't really draw a one-to-one connection with anybody. I mean, it's really, really great art. The lines are not incredibly thick. I mean, it's impressionistic in the sense that it's not trying to be, it's not trying to be realism. It's not trying to be formism, but it's, you can see it takes these little details, but it's not so impressionistic as to be like Darwin Cook. Like, you're not dealing with that level of cartooning, but it's somewhere in between. It's somewhere in between like an Elsa Chartier and maybe who was the artist from Chew?
Oh man.
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, it just left my mind. Gosh dang. Rob Guillory.
Yeah. So it's somewhere in between like an Elsa Chartier and a Rob Guillory. But to me, really, and I don't know if you felt the same way, but the biggest strength was in the coloring.
I was just getting ready to talk about the muted colors in this that are so fantastic.
Do it to it, brother.
No, I mean, I was just going to kind of coattail on you. The colors in this are muted palette, but it fits the storytelling so well that it's similar to like what you might see in Francavilla's work.
Yeah. Yep.
Even to the point where to point out what's his name, the main character again, it's man Edison my Hart. Mind is Edison's attention to detail. They put these orange squares around stuff that they want you to notice, which I love. Drawing your attention to the details that he's seen, but just I looking through it again, most of the pages don't have more than 2 or 3 colors on them. Depending on what they're trying to point in each different story here or different section of the story.
You're right. It's a very limited palette. Like you said, it's very muted. It's a lot of, like I said, with Noir has such a visual element to what makes it Noir. Go back to books like Sin City or something like that, like a visual representation of that. Very limited colors. Mostly it was 1 or 2 colors, besides other than black and negative space, you had either red or yellow.
Pretty much.
This particular book, The Good Asian, uses a broader color base than that, but they're all earth tones. I mean, they're all very
but on any 2 pages you're only getting a handful of colors,
right? And
when one page may be oranges and blacks, and one may be like a mauve and yellow or something.
Really great. Grayed down, except for those panels like you're saying where he's drawing your attention to the details, and there are those blots of orange,
right?
And I'm so glad you said Francavilla, because that was absolutely who I was thinking about.
I would actually put most of the art style in the Francavilla more so than like Rob Guillory.
Yeah, I think it's a
This
little.
would be something you might see in the Black Beetle.
I can see that. I think Francavilla is a little bit looser than maybe what
Yeah, maybe.
Tefenkgi is. But yeah, no, definitely, absolutely in that wheelhouse. I actually was thinking, as far as the color palette too, it reminds me a lot of the colors that they used in the Six Gun. Um, very very similar palette to that. Uh,
Yeah.
so no, dude,
It's a pretty book, guys. It's pretty. It's well colored. It's drawn well. Um, Everything about it, honestly.
which
You
honestly
know,
makes
there's
it. And I don't know if you had this experience with it, but as I was reading this, I was looking at how pretty the book was and how much I was enjoying the story. And you have to juxtapose with that with how hard the story is to read.
right,
And the subject matter, and I don't say hard as in difficult. I mean it hurts you to read some of it because these are
right,
real actions that were taken. It's embarrassing for me, um, but also because Pichetshote is not, he doesn't pull any punches. He's not trying to make this comfortable. He uses ethnic slurs. Both the people
right,
that are around. It's kind of like watching a Tarantino movie. You're just like, oh, I didn't need to hear Leonardo DiCaprio say that, but it plays a part, and it's meant to be grating. It's meant to, you're meant to notice it, and if you're a white reader, as we both are, you're meant to have to live with it. It's
right,
it should make you feel something. It should make you feel like embarrassment, shame. Like these shouldn't be things that you would ever say, but these were things that were commonly said at the time, and I think that's supposed to set you into the mindset. And I haven't spoken to any people who are Pacific Islander or Asian descent who have read this, but I would love to hear how they felt reading that. And because it does bring forth a different reaction in those people because they associate that language and those derogatory terms differently than what you and I do. Um, and to say that when we talk about things being of a time, um, I think this plays with that notion really well, uh, because it doesn't dismiss it. Each time it's used, it carries weight, and it really does. Even when it's used by the protagonist himself, um, and I'm not going to repeat those words just because it's not my like. I don't
yeah,
like them,
yeah.
but they're used incredibly
Not
well.
my place to repeat them, anyways.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's right where I'm at. So, but
So a lot of times in these noir style books, and I don't care who's you're reading, they fall into a pattern of a very traditional comic book layout.
Mhm.
Just because the story they're telling is an old type of story. A lot of times, one thing I love about this is that the layouts aren't that.
Right.
Even at the very beginning, right after the title page, you kind of get the prologue, then you get the title page, and then the next page is kind of a full page spread, but it says the next day, and he uses the block letters, to put story in it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the panels take the shape of the people that are in the panel.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really, really well laid out. Because as a comic book fan, a lot of times we see the same layouts over and over and over. So when you see the one that's really well done, it really stands out.
Yeah.
And I think this one's really well done.
Well, and because it's that controls your pacing, right? Like controls
Right.
how fast you move through the story. It controls what your eyes go in. You can juxtapose that with like the 9-panel grid.
Right.
That you see a lot in Tom King's work recently,
Right.
but I mean Steve Ditko used it left and right. Eisner
Well,
used
and it is easy in one of these types of stories
Mm-hmm.
to fall into a traditional layout.
Right.
But he changes the panel sizing and spacing a lot throughout this book, quite honestly.
Yeah, and like I
And
said,
it does change the pacing of how you're reading and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it does help define the story. Like I said, there's just some really cool things in here. Like the way the panels will take the shape of the stairs or the person falling down the stairs or whatever it may be. It's just done really, really well.
Yeah. Well, and last but certainly not least, one thing I love about period comics is the costuming, the fashion of the time.
Oh yeah.
And this does the artist in this book does a really good job of showing you that, the 1930s fashion. It kind of puts you into the place. Even when he uses, so there's one scene where he shows kind of these flapper girls, which is funny because I talked about the flapper queens last week, which you associate more with the 20s, but I guess was still very much a thing.
It was, and this is early 30s. So.
Yeah. So it's just the fashion and the way that the people are dressed does a really good job of like laying out, just kind of setting the atmosphere and the tone of the story.
Yeah.
And it feels like San Francisco, right? And I've been in San Francisco a whopping like 5 days in my life, if that. But the book feels like San Francisco.
It does.
So I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, do yourself a favor. Pick up this first issue if you're at all into crime noir. If none of the other things that we've talked about or Caleb's mostly talked about have sold you on it, the crime noir itself, if you're into that genre, will do it for you.
How nasty,
in my opinion.
How nasty was that last page?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's gross.
It's gross. It's well done. When you say nasty, it's not nasty in that it's bad. It's nasty in the content of what's on it.
Yeah, you can smell it. Have you ever seen a panel that you could smell?
Yeah, this is one you can smell.
Well, hey, before we talk about some stuff that we read this week, you know how every week I remind folks that we have a Facebook group that they can come and play in. We have an Instagram page. We have Twitter. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those. But also, we have a really nifty little email address, southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. And we encourage people to email us, right?
That's right.
We actually had somebody do that this week with a really cool kind of question. And now I'm not going to say the person's name because they did put it in our email as opposed to on social media. So I don't know if they wanted this to be just between us, but I thought it would make a good conversation with the show. One thing they were saying is I'm usually I'm an Image and DC person. But I really want to get into the X-Men. I've heard you guys talk about it. It sounds fun, but I'm not, I don't have a lot of history with the X-Men, and there's a lot of it. And yeah, there's a lot of it.
So the first thing I would tell somebody that's trying to get into the X-Men and doesn't know a lot of the history is you're living in a perfect time for that.
Right.
Because you can literally start with the current Hickman stuff and not know any of the previous baggage and be okay.
I agreed. Yeah.
So from that standpoint, you're living in a good time to jump into the X-Men.
Well, and that's kind of what I told him. I said, for the Hickman stuff, you really don't have to know everything. It's kind of like the Hickman stuff. It does repeat some of the history there. Like it's put in there as texture, as kind of it's kind of like sprinkles on ice cream. If you have the sprinkles on there, awesome. It's pretty. It adds a little something to it. You'll walk away. You got, who doesn't love fucking sprinkles? They're badass. But if you don't get the sprinkles, you're still getting ice cream, right? Like, it's still a good day. There's still a lot there to enjoy.
Right. And there's a lot of themes that have been put in over the years that are still going to play out in modern X-Men because those themes are now so ingrained in what the X-Men and Marvel mutantdom is that you can't separate it.
Yeah,
right.
And that's so the one place, because this person said, if there's any place that I could start, where would you suggest? And it was funny that I checked this email because I'm not the X-Men fan that you are, or that even Matt is. I say it all the time. I'm more of an Avengers cat, but there are a few books. And one thing I told him is that they kind of this new era with Krakoa was kind of a fresh start. So it's like you'll be fine. Just go pick up X-Men #1. Run with it, and you'll be cool. as long as you can look up Wikipedia or whatever. But I said, if there is one story right now that I think that if I had to hedge my bets is going to play a big role in the future, it was the House of M storyline, which was of course you got the No More Mutants. It's what the fallout from that was, with the Scarlet Witch and everything. And, and I said that because I was reading one of the X-Men stories this weekend, and it was actually the book that you and Matt spoke about. It was the Way of X book when I wasn't around, where they're sitting around and they're talking about the quilted man or whatever, the patchwork man. And he's like, no, we're talking about the villain, the Scarlet Witch. She's the devil, basically.
Right.
And I think that's going to play a big role. So I encourage this person to go read that. But I also,
I didn't know that's what he was asking, and it worked out that a lot of my stories fall into that. So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you didn't at all. What I was going to say is that I thought it would be a good time to just drop some of what our favorite stories are. Because he was like, what are some of the ones I should read? If I'm trying to get just a little bit of baggage, come in this one with. And so I was like, okay, this is a question for Craig, but I can play too. I have enough knowledge I can jump in. So.
I looking at this, I spelled Chris Claremont's name 3 different ways. So apparently I need to figure out how to actually spell his name. For me, there's some certain essential stories for X-Men, and the big name stories are the big name stories for a reason, right? Because they resonate. The first one that I think everybody needs to read is God Loves, Man Kills.
That was on my list. Yep.
Yeah, which is Chris Claremont and Brent Anderson. This story is, I'm not even going to say probably, this story is the most essential in the X-Men stories, because it establishes what we know of the politics for mutantdom, and the hatred and bigotry that has pretty much from this story forward permeated the X-Men books. So I don't think you can skip this book, this story. And I mean, you can, because they're going to give you enough background on what's going on. But I think as far as an essential story, this one establishes kind of, like I said, the political environment that the mutants take place in.
Right. That was the first book I told him to go look up. So I'm glad I got that one right.
Yeah. That one. You want me to keep going, or how do you want to do this?
Well, I'll drop one. We'll kind of ping pong it.
Okay.
I told him, go check out God Loves, Man Kills. I said, but also one of the kind of more important storylines, I think, is the Days of Future Past storyline. It's not very long. It was just a few issues, like what, two or three issues.
A couple issues.
It really set the stage for like the time aspect that is playing a lot. Like I think Hickman he definitely used that in the Hoxpox, right? With time shifting and being an element. So I said that's a good one. Introduces you to characters like Bishop, and it kind of shows you really what almost what the driving fear throughout all of X-Men history is this future of enslaved mutantdom, and what they're always fighting against.
Right.
Because they know what happens if they fail. They've seen what that is. And so I think that one's an incredibly important storyline.
It is.
And the art was outstanding in it. So
it's John Byrne.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is who he is for a reason.
And the funny thing about that, the funny thing about that particular story is John Byrne absolutely loved drawing Sentinels, and Chris Claremont did not want to write another Sentinel story, so they really clashed in this
I didn't know
series. But what we got out of it was 2 creative geniuses butting heads and giving us an excellent story. Same 2 creators. A story you need to read is the Dark Phoenix saga, which is a kind of a step out of the politics behind the X-Men and more of an internal sacrifice. this story is Jean Grey. She gets the Dark Phoenix force, and she ends up having to sacrifice herself to save the rest of the X-Men and mutantdom in general. Very, very touching story. Very real story. Yeah, the Dark Phoenix comes and goes, as the name would suggest. A phoenix is going to rise from the ashes repeatedly, as Jean has throughout the years. But there's a lot of emotional impact in this particular story.
I almost put that one on the little short list, and I think the person who emailed us will hear this, and so hopefully this will add some stuff to what I didn't send. I almost put it on there, but I was thinking kind of like what would play into, what these stories were and how they were a launch pad and what we're seeing now. And the Phoenix is weirdly has a more upfront and center.
It's more of an
in Avengers right now, which again, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'm not, I love the Avengers. I'm just not connecting with Jason Aaron's story right now.
I'm ready for them to leave the Phoenix behind completely.
Yeah, I kind of agree. So I put a more contemporary book on the list. I told him, you've got to check out The Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassidy.
Yeah, it's really good.
It really is. As far as the key characters that we have now and some of the attitudes that you see those characters have, I think I don't know that it restructured it as much as it just brought it into the new century, especially with White Queen. You get some of this kind of blending in that story of who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, which in, the X-Men, even right now, they're literally off on their own island, which is a good metaphor for how they kind of view themselves. Are they freedom fighters or are they terrorists? Well, it depends on whose neighborhood they're blowing up, and who they're fighting for. When you've got Charles Xavier, who is an asshole, teaming up with and making decisions with Xavier, or not with Magneto, who is a terrorist, while Cyclops is living on the moon, who is both of those things. What is good and what's bad. It depends on who you're fighting for. And I think that really is played up well in Astonishing X-Men. Plus, it's just amazing stories.
It is. Regardless of who that person turned out to be in real life, he did write some amazing stories, whether it was for TV or for comics. And that was one of the best comic runs for the X-Men. Yeah, and of course we already hit on this one, but pick up the trades for Hoxpox and read them, and then you'll understand fully what's going on in the X-Men universe.
Yeah. And the great thing is, like you said, we live in because we live in the modern era. You can, if you're reading Hoxpox and you're like, well, who is this weird person that's pink and purple and who is Nimrod, just Google it and you can kind of it'll give you a quick trip through the history. Obviously I think everyone should read read Uncanny Giant Size Uncanny X-Men #1 that introduces you to Storm and
so the background behind that, right?
I do, but you should tell me anyway.
Yeah, so the X-Men was floundering, basically. They were thinking about shutting it down, and they came up with a great idea of basically creating a new mutant team with mutants from all over the world instead of just from America. And luckily, Incredible Hulk 181, 182 had just come out recently, and they were able to immediately start with Wolverine. But what came out of that was the new team that we all know and love today. Kind of because it had started with Scott and Jean and Iceman and Banshee and some others, and Beast, and it needed more. Even back in the day, they realized the team needed more diversity.
Right.
And it's it's actually what saved the team, saved the book. Could you imagine a world where there was no more X-Men because it floundered and died back in the 60s?
No.
I mean, I'm sure it would have been revived at some point, but
well, and it was
crazy.
it was this kind of shift too from like the, when the X-Men first started, the X-Men has turned into a long running metaphor for, bigotry and for human rights. And in the way that I read it, a lot of ways, it's a long running queer story too. And I think Claremont meant it to be that. But when it first got kicked off, when it was Stan and Jack and, the rest of that early team, it was more of a reflection of the atomic age, right? Like this was this was burgeoning into the nuclear, similar to, the impetus of the Fantastic Four. We're playing with weird scientists. We're playing with evolution.
Well,
what it means.
The implication of the times it was written and the fears of the world was that the mutations were happening because of the atomic era.
Yeah.
Now it never comes straight out and says that, but yeah, that's right. But they do call them children of the atom. And so forth. So.
And so it kind of shifted, like with X-Men, like the giant size X-Men, it kind of shifted to being like, that was kind of a turning point, at least in my opinion. I'm totally reading this in a lot of ways. It could be in a revisionist kind of way because, dude, I'm 33. These things were written and formed decades before I've gotten there, and I haven't read it all. But to me, that really did mark the shift as far as like this globalist approach to showing how this is more of an effect on humanity. And where this is going to go, and how it mapped out the next 40 to 50 years of the X-Men.
Well, and then you can never ever underestimate Claremont's stamp on what happened with the X-Men forever after his run.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like,
so one.
Claremont,
he's
Claremont
the quintessential, right?
Yeah, I keep stepping on you. I'm sorry.
We both kept stepping on each other, but yeah, he's the quintessential creator.
Yeah, he is. And so another thing I put in there, I don't know if you ever get these, but there are these they're kind of like omnibuses, but they're soft cover, and I'm not talking like you're like, oh, you mean a trade? No, I don't mean a trade.
Yeah.
There are these collections, and they're called the Essentials. And like I'm looking at my bookshelf, I've got the Essential Incredible Hulk, but they sell these Essential X-Men's as well. I think they first started printing them like 2006 or something like that. That kind of, they're relatively cheap. You can find them online for like $25, $30 used. 400, 500, 600 pages. They're thick, and they're a collection of kind of all the important stories. But also if you're looking for a reading list, if you're wanting to dive into into X-Men and kind of walk through and see where the most important stories are, go on Disney Plus, pull up X-Men the animated series, look at the titles of the episodes, and make your reading list based off of that, because that is one really cool thing. And they use different characters because obviously the X-Men team that you get there has not always been the X-Men team, so they change a few things, but they do a really good job of walking through the X-Men timeline. They do a really good job of walking through that continuity and where things fit in. And you can make a really good reading list off of just those episodes alone. And that was how I agree. That was how I cut my teeth with the X-Men. That's to me, that's where I knew the X-Men.
Most people your age. Yep. Most people your age, that's where they became X-Men fans. The only other thing I'm going to suggest is read some X-Force books, preferably Remender's Uncanny X-Force.
Mm-hmm.
These books are written as the X-Force are kind of the group of people that do the things the X-Men can't do.
Yeah, they're the wet works team.
Yeah, they're the the special ops, the black ops team for the X-Men, where you can't have the face of your X-Men out there doing bad stuff necessarily, but sometimes a person just got to die. And especially in Remenders, you kind of have this back and forth between Scott and Wolverine, Cyclops and Wolverine, where Cyclops is running the X-Men, but he's perfectly okay letting Wolverine be the bad guy.
Right.
So it's kind of the start of the friction between those two that led to a lot of other problems later. But yeah. It's a good story to read as well. Outside of that, once you get through those stories, you should have a pretty good idea of what the X-Men are.
Well, and if you want to branch out from just that core team, like the core team that we think of as the X-Men, I would say check out Peter David's X Factor, especially that X Factor Volume 2. When you get into, again, this is fallout from the House of M storyline, but you get Jamie Madrox, you get Farrell, you just get so many of these cool side characters who were never on the quote unquote team. As far as the X-Men goes, but they were living in this little area that was mapped off for mutants. It was almost like a mutant ghetto, trying to do their own thing. And you get a different take on it. And you realize that these are, like, not all mutants are on the same page. Not all of them are Xavier's students, or if they were at one time, right, they branched off. I think you especially see that with Madrox. Like I love Peter David. He wrote some of my favorite Hulk stuff, but one of my favorite mutant-based books is definitely his X Factor book, just because it's incredibly strong writing, and you get a glimpse at these different teams, these different figures, and different villains too. Aside from that, a shout out to a podcast that I really like, which is Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. If you've never listened to that and you don't have time to read, you can just go listen to that. Like they do such an incredible job of walking you through the entire history. I don't know what number that they're up to now, but they're getting close to the modern era. But they not only do like your Uncanny X-Men books, they branch off and talk about everything, anything nice, like just relates to it, and do a really good job breaking it down. So, which is hard work, right? Like there's a lot.
There is a lot.
So, but yeah, I thought we would just have some fun with that on the show. Yeah. Just talk about it, because
it's always fun to talk about the X-Men.
And if anybody else has a question, like if you're out there and you're like, okay, well, what about the Avengers, or what about the Justice League? I just watched a 4-hour black and white thing that I'm confused about. But like, what are some of the main stories for those characters? I can't guarantee we'll give you the right answer, but we'll definitely give you an answer. Shoot us an email, ask us, and we'll communicate with you offline, like we did with our friend here, and we'll chat about it on the show, because it's fun. It's good times.
Good times were had by all.
It will put some stuff on your list to go read. So, oh yeah, comics. That's what we're talking about.
More comics. Yeah.
What did you read this week, brother?
Yeah, I read a book. Believe it or not, it's a Star Wars book. Can you believe that?
No.
Yeah, War of the Bounty Hunters #1 by Marvel, written by Charles Soule, who generally is hit and miss for me, but in the Star Wars universe is mostly hit. It's drawn by Steve McNiven, wonderfully drawn by Steve McNiven, I should say. Colored by Laura Martin and Travis Lanham, I think is how you say his name on letters.
VC.
So, yeah. I mean, or Travis, or Lanham.
That man puts down some letters.
Yeah, he does. So this particular book picks up right after the events of Empire Strikes Back, and Boba Fett has the frozen body of Han Solo and is on his way to Jabba. On the way, however, he notices something is wrong with his prized possession, and he also is very aware that if Han were to die before he gets there, Jabba would be very upset. He knows this because he just got off of a call with Bib Fortuna, Jabba's major domo, who told him as much. So Boba stops and solicits the help of a doctor friend of his, who tells him that he can fix Han and keep him alive. However, he only takes payments up front. Boba Fett tries to negotiate with him, and the doctor says, listen, you know me, I'm not going to negotiate. I know you. I only take credits up front. And so Fett, who doesn't have any credits at this point in time, ends up taking a job from the doctor to pay for Han's safety. The job is to take out a target. However, he can't take her out directly because, well, she is valuable to the Kanji Huts crime organization. And you might remember the Kanji Huts from The Force Awakens. So it's kind of a throwback to one of the groups that was after Han Solo then.
Mm-hmm.
The only way he can take her out is to join in an arena battle where she happens to be the champion. So to protect himself from the kanji, so they don't know who he is, he paints his armor black with a temporary paint that will wear off after some time, and enters under the name Django, because no one would ever piece that Django and Boba are the same person, right? Taking his dad's name. So he fights his way through the arena and eventually has his battle with her. And after time, he ends up taking her out. The only problem is now the kanji either want his winnings to pay for their losses, or he can stay and fight for them for a while until he's paid them back. He doesn't have time for that, and he really needs the credits, but he ends up just walking away and leaving the winnings with the kanji rather than fighting them. So with his debt fulfilled to the doctor, he goes back only to find that the doctor is dead and his prized possession has been stolen. As he prepares to hunt down the people who took Solo, he gets a call from Bib Fortuna asking where he is, and that Jabba is growing impatient. Fett is now on the verge of not only losing his potential credits for the reward on Solo, but also on the verge of losing his life for making Jabba angry. What will happen? Tune in next issue of War of the Bounty Hunters to find out. So I got the director's edition of this.
Mm-hmm.
And one really cool thing is that what I guess makes it the director's edition is the entire story is reprinted at the back in black and white. So it's kind of cool to see it without the colors on it. Very pretty artwork. Very nice. I haven't been a big fan of the Bounty Hunter series in general in the Star Wars universe, but this one, this has got my attention. And partially because it's tying into what we know already.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I was going to say. It's got such a tether to the actual films.
Right.
That I can see.
We all just assume that Boba Fett leaves and shows up at Jabba's palace and gets his reward money and on he goes, right? But
yeah.
That's apparently not what happened. So apparently other bounty hunters are after Solo as well, because I'm sure there's a huge, reward on his head. So
I'm always interested, and I have been since I was a kid. Anytime that they bring in the Hutts and the Hutt cartel into it, because the films really did a great job of like establishing that these are people who are not to be fucked with, but we don't know why. And you're sitting here watching, you're like, how does I don't get it. Like that dude has no special laser powers. He can't use the Force. He's just kind of a slug that just sits there. How did these people amass power? Like they're so vulnerable and relatively weak.
How does everybody else amass power?
Exactly. Like you start to. I love how they contextualize through the comics and through these other stories, just how nasty these dudes can be.
Yeah. I really, with all of the stories, the independent shows they're doing, I was really hoping we would get a Godfather type show or a Sopranos type show that had the Hutts, Jabba the Hutt, for instance. You can put it in that time frame because we know he's alive all the way from the prequels to the sequel. Well, not to the sequels, to the Return of the Jedi, right? So you could put it anywhere in there and have this marvelous gangster story with his, different people out doing his dirty work for him, but maybe really get into what makes the Hutts such badasses, for lack of a better term, in the Star Wars universe.
It's funny that you mentioned The Sopranos, because I totally just started watching that.
I need to watch that.
It's on HBO Go, the Hope
yeah.
or HBO Max, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm up to episode 7, but I like.
Yeah, I need to watch it. Yeah.
Are you reading I forget what the actual title is. There's a new Star Wars Tales of the Jedi or something book that we actually talked about the first episode on the show, Knights of the whatever. I forget what the actual title. It's great radio, right?
Yeah, it's the.
Is it Knights of the Old Republic?
No, it's the High Republic era.
Yes, that
stuff.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm actually reading both of those series. There's a main series in the main Marvel universe, and then there's a quote unquote kid series that IDW is doing. I'm reading both. I'm enjoying both of them. I finished. Got about halfway through the first prose novel and haven't finished it yet. I need to get back to it.
You need a hammock,
but you're right. But they have quite a few of the books out in the series beyond just the comics. But kind of interesting that it all takes place with in a different time. With the only common thread there is Yoda.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say, just on the topic of the Hutts, because I'm reading that series. It's the only Star Wars series I'm reading. In the last issue or the issue before last, the Hutts actually show up, and they're in these giant mech suits, and so it's the Hutts, but badass in these giant mechanical outfits. It's awesome.
Yeah, the Hutts are pretty amazing.
I loves it. I likes it.
Right.
Good stuff. Well, so I want to talk about a book, and I'm actually going to try to. So how a lot of times, and this is, I do this all the time. This is not me, throwing shade at us or anything like that. But a lot of times we talk about a new number one, and we just kind of never circle back to it. We'll talk about it and we'll continue reading it, but
guilty.
Yeah, super guilty. I mean, 100%. I kind of want to do a better job about that. I was talking to another listener on our Facebook group a couple weeks ago, and they were like, yeah, whatever happened to this book? You still reading it? And you guys talked about the first issue. Haven't heard anybody say anything else about this particular series. I'm like, no, dude, I love it, but you're right. We get so ingrained or so, I guess, self-trained to talk about new stuff that's coming out that I'm trying to do a better job about that. I want to circle around to some of the first issues that we've read and just talk about what's happening with it. Did something similar a few weeks ago when I talked about Guardians of the Galaxy. I think number 13 was like, hey, this is a good thing on point.
I feel a new segment coming on for our show.
Maybe that'd be cool.
Yeah. I
wouldn't even
like a follow-up segment or something. Yeah.
I'd be 1,000% down for that. But I'm going to use
circle back around segment or something. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. I keep.
No, you're good. I'm going to use my book of the week to do that. And so exactly 6 issues ago, we spoke about the new book out of Image Comics called Crossover, written by Donnie Cates, drawn by Jeff Shaw, with colors by Dean Cuniff and John J. Hill on the letters of that. We all read it. I think we roundtabled it, and it was cool. It kind of set up a new world. It did this meta thing where, there was a breach and superhero characters broke through to the real world, quote unquote. And they were all sequestered kind of over Oklahoma. There was a dome. They couldn't get out of it. But it, set up its own sense of bigotry. And, we don't like the supers because they killed so many people by accident. Kind of had this real world, what happens when the Hulk smashes through a skyscraper? Well, lots of people actually die. And they dealt with that. But we weren't sure what was going to happen with it. None of us really understood I don't think we had any way to understand at the time why it was called Crossover, other than, the superheroes had crossed over into the quote unquote real world. But the book has gone on from there and done so much. And it has really embodied its name. And it went from being what I just said to being an actual crossover event for Image Comics. And we didn't expect it to do that. I didn't expect it to do that. Had no idea that it was going to do that. In the 3rd or 4th issue, Madman, Mike Allred's Madman, came through and became a main character. So kind of some of the baggage with the story, if you don't know, young girl, her name is Ellipsis. We call her Ellie for short. She's a nerd. She works in a comic shop. She loves superheroes, and she exists in this world where she actually sees what superheroes really do. And her family is still stuck in this gnome. And some shit goes down. They have to go and find it. And this other young girl shows up, she is a super. She's looks like she's fresh out of a comic book, and she has that kind of 4-color look to her. And they're going to help her get home. It's just like, we're going to break through. There's this faction of like religious zealots that want to murder and destroy all the supers. Of course, like religious zealots are wont to do. There's it's really a quest for power. It's really somebody who's a grifter, using the power grab to make money and everything. Well, his son makes the wrong move. He ends up with this group of people, with Ellie and her crew, going to the dome by way, and he's carrying this pistol, which actually has like what you're supposed to know to be kryptonite in it, that he's going to use to kill whatever Superman shows up in this book. But in issue 6, they have gotten to the dome. There has been this big breach. There was this prison off-site called the Rift or something like that. It was like making fun of the Raft, I guess homaging the Raft from Marvel, where all these superhero villains were caged at. All these supers that had been in prison broke out, and they're all fighting each other, right? Like left and right. It's just carnage, and people are dying left and right. Well, in this 6th issue, this young super, this girl that Ellie had found, shows up, and she has started to manifest her own powers, and she's a badass. She's kind of a world breaker, and they are terrified because she's about to use these powers, and it's going to wreck shop. And the son is going to shoot her to stop it. Kind of this end of the world moment. But Ellie's not having it. Elle just like, she uses this staff that is not unlike the Starman staff to like, beams him over the head with it. It's like, you can't kill her. She's a little girl. Like if you go after that gun, I'm going to kill you. We're not playing this game. And as they kind of have this moment to where they're like, okay, you're right. We can't do this. You've got, I said staff. She does have a staff. She's also 1000% carrying the big sword from God Country, from Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw's other series. So she's got that, which is a tie into that story. And she's using it to open these portals, and she's going to collect all of her people and get them to safety. While all of this carnage is kind of like wrecking shop behind her. And who might be taking part in that carnage, you might ask? Well, you've got Savage Dragon. He's fighting Witchblade. The darkness is over to the side. You've got our buddy Justin Jordan and Trads Moore's Luther Strode is kicking ass. There's the zombies from The Walking Dead. They're everywhere. You've got the characters from, I think it looks like the characters from Chew, who are in there doing their own thing. At one moment, it's really funny. Some of the characters from Black Hammer show up. Like there's just this giant conglomerate of these superheroes that they had. These people have, Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw reached out to and got the rights to use in this crossover. You've got a Tomahawk is in there. The Powers characters from Bendis and Oming are in there. There's a ton of like Rob Liefeld's characters, Mark Waid's Incorruptible people are in there. There's Shadowhawk from Jim Valentino. Like there's just so many. There's some of the I Hate Fairyland, Scotty Young characters in there, and you just get these really cool spreads of all these figures in the same place for, as far as I know, the first time. Never seen this. As our team, our little troop of people are trying to make their way to safety, and buildings are crashing and falling around everywhere. Like I said, there's zombies, and they're just having to fight. And there's this really cool scene, and I said spoilers, so if you haven't read this, you can't get mad, where they're cornered by these zombies, and there's no hope, right? They're not getting out. They're toast. Fucking Hit Girl shows up. And she's just like, yeah, I'm good. I'll take it from here. And like they literally have these reactions just like we would if we saw this. And Ellie's like, holy shit, that's Hit Girl. It's really lighthearted, even though there's all this carnage running around. Fun. We live in a world where you have all these big two crossovers, but to see this done with these Image characters, not only based out of the 90s, but just the ones that we've seen since then. Even like I said, Gert from I Hate Fairyland shows up for a moment in this. The story goes on. They get some of the members to safety. There's this one scene where there's kind of an important figure who's been there since the very beginning. He passes away in a very the book. Donny Cates has this really good way, and you can't give him all the credit because it's Jeff Shaw's visuals where they shift the tone of the book from being this action-packed, lighthearted, oh my God, these characters are all there, to being a very poignant, emotive, heartbreaking moment, like just from the flip of a page. It's beautiful storytelling. Donny Cates as a storyteller is at the top of his game. Jeff Shaw is able to do so much with his visuals. D. Cunniff's colors add the tone and everything. You just can't say enough good things about what you are seeing pour out of this book. At the end of the moment, they're kind of dealing with the aftermath. Ellie and the preacher's kid, who I forget his name off the top of my head. They're having this moment where they're trying to find out where everybody else is. They're trying to pick up the pieces. They've lost members of their troop, and they're having this conversation, and really they're talking about what they need to do next, where they need to go from here. And they're like, well, maybe we go to Colorado, we go to find your parents. That seems like a good trail to chase down. But it turns out that Ellie has been keeping a secret this whole time. And I won't tell you what it is. You got to circle back around to read this. Not only for the story that you're getting here, like this brand new tale, but just for these moments, just for these little images of like Madman holding Valifax from freaking God Country. Like that's cool. Like this is, if you're into superhero comics, and we are, right? Like as much as I love Drawn and Quarterly stuff, I like talking about books like The Good Asian, which is a noir story. We can love all the other genres, but I don't know very many comic fans who aren't in love with superheroes on some extent. We ebb and we flow on them, but if you all loved Image Comics, and you get to see the wildest stuff pouring out of this, and we use the phrase a love letter to comics a lot. Like we say it all the time about Black Hammer. It's Jeff Lemire's love letter to comics. We say it about a number of things, but this is, again, it's a love letter to Image. It is hands down one of the funnest books that will put a smile on your face if you have any love for this world and these characters whatsoever. It's just there's a double page spread in here, which I don't have enough money to ever own, but if I did, it would fill a hole in my heart. So good stuff.
I'm kind of sad I dropped off of that.
Oh, brother, now. you gotta get it. You've got to get on it.
Yeah.
You're going to just stand at full mast. So it's gonna make you smile so big your face hurts. Be like,
I may have to dig them out and read them.
Do it. I dare you. A double dog dare you. You have to. So, all right. So, yeah, like you said, come back next week, see what else. I'm going to try to maybe, again, go back and circle around, see what else has came out. Not guaranteeing it, but I think I need to do a better job about that. And that way we put our money where our mouth is. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we say, hey, like, we're going to stay on this. Oh, yeah? Well, tell me about it.
Did you? Yeah.
So I'm going to try to do a better job about that. So.
Fantastic.
Well, all right, brother. We got anything else we need to chit chat about? We need to cover. Did you get an email?
No, I did not get an email. Probably time to just move on to our, short stack, or not our short stack, but our
going back to the beginning.
Yeah. Let's start over. Let's just wrap it back around and do the show again.
Do another.
No. Get on to our Wednesday pickup books.
Well, get on to it, brother. What you grab
on the menu? Well, I'm going to give you Matt's first.
Oh,
because I know what he was going to pick. And that's Maniac of New York by Aftershock Comics. This is number 4, issue number 4. He's been talking about it all along.
That sounds like a Matt book.
Yeah, it's the the serial killer in New York, but there's more involved to it that he's been talking about. So I know that's the book he'd want. So
I guarantee
thought we'd put that in there for him. Yep. So you want me to go or you want to go?
Tell you what, I will go. And I will go. It's a book that I'm going to tell you to pick up the 3rd issue, but it's a book that I should have told you to pick up all along. It's something that we all should have been grabbing, and we all should have read. And the fact that we haven't mentioned on the show is it's almost a crime. It's all, it's we deserve slap on the hands. But there is a book, and it comes from Mad Cave Studios, and the issue that's coming out next week is Nottingham number 3. But when you go pick it up, you should do your due diligence, and you should circle back around and pick up 1 and 2. And this is a book. It's kind of it's a I don't want to say a parody. It's an homage to exactly what you should think of when you hear the word Nottingham. It's kind of a Robin Hood-esque type story. It uses some of those tropes, but in number 3, the sheriff of Nottingham stalks a traitor through the darkened boughs of Sherwood Forest to Kirklees Abbey. The chase will bring Eve face to face with a troubling figure from his past. With the Nottingham guard distracted, Hood and the merry men plot their next move.
Nice.
Written by David Hazen with art by Shane Connery Volk. It is the good stuff from Mad Cave Studios. Go check out Nottingham.
All right. Well, the book I'm going to pick out is actually one I thought you were going to pick, which is why I gave you the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a new ongoing series by Declan Shalvey and Joe Palmer. And it's called Time Before Time, Image Comics. The year is 2140, and to escape a world with no future, many turn to the Syndicate, a criminal organization who, for the right price, will smuggle you back in time to a better life. After working for the Syndicate for years, Tatsuo and Oscar decide to steal one of their boss's time machines, but soon find that the one thing you can't escape is your past. So
I cannot wait to read this, and you're right. I have been waiting on this to come out for so long. Love Declan.
I know you do. That's why I thought this was going to be your book of the week or pick of the week.
It should have been, and I thought about it, but I really wanted to throw out the Nottingham. Look, full disclosure, we get to meet some really cool people doing this podcast. We get to make some friends. I have gotten to become pretty good friends with David, who is the writer of Nottingham.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to throw it out. Plus, and if anybody's interested in the book that you just talked about, Time After Time, our brothers, our friends, our compatriots in comics, people that I think we both have become good friends with, our buddies over at the 11 O'Clock Comics podcast just recently had Declan Shalvey on to talk about that book and to talk about all of his other books like Bog Bodies, what it's like to go from doing art to now writing, kind of making that jump, some of his plans for the future, his thoughts on the industry as a whole. They had just a really robust and fascinating conversation with Declan that, man, if you are a fan of podcasts, like if you're listening to the show,
nice.
You are, go listen to Declan on EOC. Jason, Dave, and Vince, they put that man through the question ringer, and what came out was just pure goodness. So you got to go take a listen to that if you haven't.
So yeah, real quick before we move on, you said we get to meet a lot of great people in this, what we do here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say in this business, but we aren't getting paid. So one of the people we've got to know really well is Justin Jordan.
Right.
And last night, this will be my headcanon for Justin forever now. I dreamt that Justin was an immortal Viking.
That wasn't a dream. That was actually just
that will be my headcanon from now on when talking to Justin. He is an immortal Viking.
I'm really excited. So he sent me a message. When I posted about having my last day of my second year of law school, he jokingly said makes plans to come in and crash your graduation party, and I hope he does. I dare him to. That'd be awesome. And because we need 4 books, we can't let you get out of here without just a even number, a nice square. We like nice squares. There is a book coming out solidly in our X wheelhouse, since we talked about X-Men this time. X-Corp #1 comes out this next week. This book is written by Teeny Howard, who I'm a big fan of. Alberto Foch does the art on this, lettered by Ariana Maurer. Jonathan Hickman has his hands all up in it. Sonny Go is doing those colors, and with a nice little variant cover by Tom Mueller. Krakoa is for closers is the pitch on this book. It's all about that business, since we're talking about the business. Deals have been made.
Nice.
Mutant kind is safe on Krakoa. The reign of X continues. What are the wants of the mutants, and who will have everything? Like, they've got this, these plants that they can do so much with. This is the business side. So leading the charge is X-Corp, which is headed by CXO's Monet St. Croix, who I love some Monet. Warren Worthington the third, Mr. Angel himself, is also sitting on that board of directors, and the duo is as cutthroat and as ruthless in the boardroom as they are on the battlefield. But X-Corp needs more than just figureheads. Monet sets out to staff their team with some of the brightest and most deviant minds in mutant kinds. I want this. Like, this is the side of the X-Men
Right.
I didn't know I needed, but it is as somebody who just took business associations, I need to know how X-Corp works. Like the lawyer, the little baby lawyer in me cannot wait to see just how sassy and how just boss Monet is.
I will say nothing describes the X-Men and what's going on in X-Men lore more so than having a book about the business side of it right now. I want it so bad. I cannot wait. So go check out that. So, well, man, I had fun, and we haven't done this show just you and me in a hot minute, and I always enjoy talking to you. Yeah, good times, man.
So
it's always fun.
Loves it. And we'll be back the same time, same place. For all of you, again, women out there who are mothers, and to all of you people who have mothers, to people who are matronly figures, thank you for all you do. We really appreciate it. Mean a lot to us. Enjoy your day, hopefully by listening to a podcast. So if you're sitting at home, call your mama, if
right.
you can. And to those of you who are kind of having a tough time, and I can speak on this a little bit because things have gotten better in my own life, but there was a time where I had a rift between me and my parents. If today is hard for you, know that you're not alone. If you have lost your mother, you're not able to give her a call, understand that that's perfectly okay and perfectly normal to feel that way. And again, like I said, for those of you who may not have the best relationship with your mom, understand that today is rough. And if any of you need to reach out, need to talk to somebody, get your mind off things, holler at us. That's what we're here for. We're your friends, and we'll find something else to talk about. So, man, if nothing further, I don't know what we do here. Matt took over the closer, and now he's gone. So how do we end the show? I'm gonna say go forth and love comics. I don't know what's gonna happen after that.
Excelsior.
Excelsior. Was there a CH in that?
No, but I'm Southern.
There you go.
Excelsior.
That works. I likes it a lot.
You can cut out the other one. Just use the good one.
Absolutely not.
Okay.